This episode was requested by one of our Rock Solid TV subscribers, Mr. Rooney Boy, who dropped a killer comment. Do a video on Napoleon and his visit to the pyramids when he stayed overnight in the king's chamber. So you know what? We did. And what we found will flip the script on everything you thought you knew about Napoleon and the pyramids. They say he went in alone. They say he stayed overnight. They say he came out pale as death and refused to speak of what he saw. On his deathbed, he was asked again and whispered, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." Sounds like fiction, right? Or is it a historical cover-up? Tonight, we follow the footprints of an emperor into one of the world's oldest mysteries. This is Rock Solid TV, and this is the truth they don't teach in school. What if one of the most powerful men in modern history, Napoleon Bonaparte, walked into an ancient Egyptian pyramid and walked out forever changed? That's the legend. And it's more than just some dusty folktale. It's one of the most persistent, most bizarre, and most unexplained stories ever connected to a world leader. They say Napoleon entered the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid alone, that he stayed there for hours, that he came out pale as death, and that when asked what he saw, he refused to speak of it. Not then, not ever. But is any of it true? Or is this another myth designed to give a man a godlike aura? Let's dig up the past, cut through the lies, and face the truth like never before. Setting the stage, Napoleon's Egypt obsession. In 1798, Napoleon wasn't just invading Egypt. He was on a divine mission. He brought scientists, not just soldiers, artists, mathematicians, engineers. He wasn't just after land, he was after legacy. Egypt was seen as mystical, biblical, ancient. Napoleon was obsessed with symbols of power. He wore Roman-style laurel wreaths. He compared himself to Caesar and Alexander the Great. He wanted to be remembered as the man who bridged ancient wisdom with modern empire. So when he stood before the Great Pyramid of Giza, one of the last remaining wonders of the ancient world, it wasn't just curiosity, it was destiny. Anatomy of the legend. Let's break down the story you've heard. Napoleon asked to be left alone inside the Great Pyramid. He stayed in the king's chamber for several hours. When he finally emerged, he was pale, shaken, and refused to speak. On his deathbed, someone asked him what happened in there. His reply, "You wouldn't believe me if I told you. It's a great story, too great, too neat, too cinematic." But here's the kicker. There's zero contemporary evidence this ever happened. Nothing from his journals. Nothing from the men who traveled with him, nothing. So where did this story come from? William Henry Ireland, the man who lied to the world. The story first appears in 1822. That's a year after Napoleon died, and it comes from a man named William Henry Ireland, a known forger and hoax artist. This guy once forged plays and claimed they were written by Shakespeare. He fabricated letters, signatures, and full manuscripts. He was exposed, humiliated, and later turned to publishing anecdotes for money. So when he published the story about Napoleon sleeping in the pyramid, nobody batted an eye. But over time, the story grew legs. Pyramid power, the occult symbolism. Why do people want this story to be true? Because the Great Pyramid is more than a pile of rocks. It's a symbol of ancient power, divine knowledge, a structure that predates empires. In Freemasonry, the pyramid is sacred. In New Age circles, it's an energy conductor. In conspiracy lore, it's a gateway, a transmitter, a monument built by something other than man. So when you insert a powerful modern figure like Napoleon into this context, you create an initiation myth, a ritual, a rebirth. And let's not ignore it. Many powerful men like to be tied to myths. It boosts their mystique. It adds spiritual weight to political power. The historical rebuttal. Now for the hard truth. Louis de Bourrienne, Napoleon's private secretary, wrote detailed memoirs. He said Napoleon never entered the Great Pyramid. Not once. In fact, he mocked the idea. So either Bourrienne lied to cover it up, or the whole thing is just a myth. And if it was a secret ritual, why would Napoleon tell anyone? But then again, why would the secretary make such a hard denial? It's a historical dead end, or carefully laid trail of misdirection. Was there something to hide? Let's entertain the theory that he did go in. What could he have seen? A vision? A premonition of his downfall? An encounter with ancient energy? Evidence of something not built by man? People have speculated for centuries. Some say he saw the timeline of his life laid out in glowing hieroglyphs. Others say he emerged believing he was destined for divine kingship. Some even claim he was possessed, enlightened, marked. And here's the eerie part. Napoleon did undergo a radical personality shift shortly after the Egypt campaign. He became colder, more ruthless, more determined. Coincidence or consequence? The deathbed quote. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." That's the most quoted line in this story. It sells the mystery. But here's the twist. There's no verified source for that quote. None. Not from doctors, not from family, not from his official record. It appears only in hearsay, often repeated, never cited. In other words, it's a meme before memes existed. The psychology of belief. Why do people love this story? Because we crave meaning. We want to believe that powerful men tap into something ancient, that behind every empire is an encounter with the unknown. This story survives because it hits a nerve, where power, mystery, and spirituality collide. It's not about facts, it's about mythology, and Napoleon, like Caesar and Alexander before him, became more than a man, he became legend. Final verdict. So, did Napoleon stay in the pyramid? Probably not. There's no real evidence, no reliable witnesses, and the story began with a known liar. But in another sense, maybe he did. Maybe not in the physical, literal sense, but in the mythic sense. He entered the pyramid of legend and never left it, because people still talk about it, still debate it, still believe. And that, my friends, is how legends work. Whether true or false, they shape history, identity, and power. And now you know the story they didn't teach you in school. And before we close this one out, I want to give a big shout out to Mr. Rooney Boy, one of our Rock Solid TV subscribers, for requesting this exact topic. Brother, I hope I covered it in a way that you found interesting and worth the watch. It was a wild rabbit hole to dive into. And honestly, I probably never would have explored it this deeply if you hadn't dropped that comment. See, that's one of the things I love most about this channel. These kinds of requests push me. They force me to research topics I might have overlooked, and I truly enjoy learning. Every time I dig into something like this, I walk away with a deeper appreciation for how twisted, strange, and fascinating history really is. So if you're watching this and you've got a topic on your mind, a mystery, a theory, a question, a verse, a cover-up, drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and you might just see your idea turn into a future episode. This is Rock Solid TV, where we don't just repeat history, we interrogate it. Stay sharp, stay curious, stay rock solid.